Gospel lesson for this morning is from Luke's Gospel, the 21st chapter, beginning at the 25th verse. And there's a printed copy of that from the Message translation in your song sheet this morning. I'm going to read from that translation. This is Jesus speaking. It will seem like all hell is broken loose. Sun, moon, stars, earth, sea in an uproar, and everyone all over the world in a panic. The wind knocked out of them by threat of doom, the powers that be quaking. And then they'll see the Son of Man welcomed in grand style, a glorious welcome. When all this starts to happen, up on your feet, stand tall with your heads high. Help is on the way. He told them a story. Look at a fig tree, any tree for that matter. When the leaves begin to show, one look tells you that summer is right around the corner. The same here. When you see these things happen, you know God's kingdom is about here. Don't brush this off. I'm not just saying this for some future generation, but for this one too. These things will happen. Sky and earth will wear out. My words won't wear out. But be on guard. Don't let the sharp edge of your expectation get dulled by parties and drinking and shopping. Otherwise, that day is going to take you by complete surprise, spring on you suddenly like a trap, for it's going to come on everyone, everywhere, at once. So whatever you do, don't go to sleep at the switch. Pray constantly that you will have the strength and wits to make it through everything that's coming and end up on your feet before the Son of Man. Here ends the gospel. We join together singing, It Came Upon the Midnight Clear. You may remain seated as we sing. And Jesus said there'll be a day when all hell seems to be breaking loose. Words written so long ago, but they sound kind of contemporary, don't they? All you have to do is watch the news, and you have the feeling that that may be happening. I can imagine people in certain parts of the country who literally feel that's happening. Can you imagine what it's like to be around when one of those bombs are set off by some terrorist person, some person trying to bring about an agenda through violence, taking innocent lives? Those people on the ferry that capsized. We think about those kinds of events and we understand all hell breaking loose. So it's not an ancient worldview, is it? It's actually rather contemporary. But what Jesus is talking about is not some event which it becomes a marker in the history book, but rather about the old world disappearing, the old world coming apart. As we get older, we see signs of that in various places. Some of our ideas about life have changed radically. Some of the changes in our society are changes we don't always welcome. And so we often think, gee, the old stuff is coming apart. And how many times have you said, oh, it was better in the good old days? Of course, you don't really remember the good old days all that well. And when they were the good old days, they weren't that good because they had changed from the good old days. And then there was the good old days. And so depending on how old you are, the good old days stretch back an awful long way. But we think we see massive changes, and every generation has that to say. Today, of course, we have a lovely variety of things that are causing us to require lots of aspirin, Excedrin, Aleve, and all those other kinds of things. We have the economic crisis. We hear the economic experts. These are the same experts who told us a couple of years ago, oh, things are going great. Remember that? It's the same experts that are talking now. I just love, and I wish I had a picture, an autographed picture of him saying it when Alan Greenspan said, I guess I was wrong. We have the healthcare crisis, things being said about it, ideas coming forth, people criticizing, people supporting, and we're all trying to sort this out because this isn't a discussion to them. To us, this is when I go and see my doctor, what's going to happen? When I go to the pharmacy counter, what am I going to pay? And 5 years from now, when I've got to have cancer treatments or treatments for my heart or something, then what's going to happen? So these things are much more important. And we have environmental imperatives. We hear about certain parts of our country being ruined environmentally. And we worry about the rise of other countries, undeveloped countries who want to pollute the air as much as we do. Want to drive as many cars as we drive. In fact, in some countries, they'll drive many, many more cars. And I remember when it wasn't too long ago, especially after World War II, when America was the most powerful nation on earth, both economically, militarily. You know, when I was in seminary, I had a history of religions professor who had been educated at Yale and Princeton and taught at the University of Maine and came over to the seminary to teach history of religions to us. And one day in one of those tangent questions, somebody asked Dr. Yelm, what's the future of America? And he said, well, someday I think America will be on the same level that we think of today, about the same level as Sweden. We're going in that direction, aren't we? Now we have the rise of China and India. And all those alliances that we had in the past are going to be replaced by our alliances with China and India. And some of you know that when you make a phone call for customer service, you're talking to someone in India. We've said that before. China and India are going to become great economic powers in the world. And then we have the challenge of new ethnic groups. And new ethnic groups all over the world are changing the face of society, changing the face of institutions. And they are especially changing the face of the church all over the world. We white Anglo-Saxon Protestants are not the majority of Christianity. We are a long way down the list now. And in some cities, the majority population has already switched over to one of those we used to refer to as the minority. Now, Jesus talks about war and the injustice, the violence that goes along with it. Of course, those are not new problems, obviously. And for us, we feel it's a kind of an ongoing thing. Do you remember times when America was absolutely at peace and there was really no threat around us? You remember those times? If you do, please write it down and let me know when that was. It's a constant theme in history. And Jesus says, in the midst of all this, stand tall with your heads up high. Help is on the way. The more traditional translation is, your redemption is drawing nigh. Your redemption is drawing nigh. See, this is the good news. And it's said kind of at the end of all this other description of the terrible things. It's said so quickly that it could slip by us. But redemption, a word we don't use very often, and some of us don't even, I had to look it up in a dictionary to make sure I had all the implications of that word. But redemption is important to us. And all of you know redemption in your lives some way, but you probably didn't use that word. Redemption means to free, to recover, to change something into something good, something of value, to make good on a promise. So that redemption word is something we all know. In fact, in some cases, it saved our lives. Every one of us needs the chance, for instance, to redeem our lives, to change something about our lives and to make it good and new. People need to overcome failures. They need to redeem their lives in that respect. They need to make good on something that went wrong. And if there is one of you in the audience who has not ever had to make good on something that went wrong, I would have to say you're living in a dream world.